I had the pleasure of sitting down with Josh Feldman, who is the producer and writer of the film Animal. In this conversation, we talk through what the purpose of the movie is, what to expect from a movie that focuses on diets and healing diets, such as the carnivore diet, and who it's for. I now eat a lot of meat, and so do they. If you want to thrive, you need to eat meat. Meat is required. Hey guys, my name is Judy Cho and I'm board certified in holistic nutrition. And I have a private functional medicine practice where we focus on root cause healing. And that often starts with the Carnivore Cures all meat elimination diet. Today, I had the pleasure of sitting down with Josh Feldman. He is one of the producers of the upcoming film Animal. I had the pleasure of getting to know Josh while we were filming for the movie. And I learned a lot about his journey and why he even decided to produce this film. In this interview, he shares even more about his personal journey, how the medical system affected his family, and now why he's trying to do and make movies such as this film to support the greater good of the world. In the film, I talk about the fact that sometimes we forget about common sense or logic, and we have to get back to trusting our own selves. I talk about our new puppy, and let me introduce you to him. So, this is our puppy. In his first holistic vet visit, the vet mostly asked about his diet, his energy, his ability to exercise and move, his temperament, but the majority of the visit was asked about his diet. So if he is lethargic, well, what has he been eating lately? And so these are the questions that we should be asking ourselves when we go to doctor's visits or wellness checks. What are we eating to be thriving or not thriving? And so in this conversation, Josh and I get into a lot of this discussion, what this film can do, and hopefully it helps people to start questioning just the narrative of what is optimal health and what we need to seek for optimal health. Let's get right into the interview. Hi, Josh. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel. I'm really excited for people on my channel to get to know you better, understand the film that you've been working on, and a little bit more about even your own journey. And if you want to just introduce the film as well to the people that are listening and watching.
Amazing, Judy. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. This is a dream come true. Making this film has been a dream come true, and then obviously meeting each and every one of you along the way, which was by design, which is what I intended when I wrote the movie itself and started putting it together. So my name is Josh Feldman, and I am the writer, director, and co-producer of the Animal documentary feature film, which we are so incredibly happy that you were able to make the time to be a part of this, what we believe to be such an incredibly important film where we find ourselves in this time and space as a species. Animal really is a film that explores real healing. It took me many months to obviously put the research in place and understand your journey, having read your books, and everybody else's journey in order to kind of assemble this absolute work of art, if I may say.
And thank you. Thank you so much for having me part of the story too. So I appreciate that so much. I know that the way that you were filming, and I don't know a ton about filming and stuff, but that it's a little different than a standard or typical documentary. Can you share a little bit about why you chose to go that route in this storytelling?
Well, what is a documentary feature film? You can pick one protagonist and follow their journey effectively. You can pick a particular subject matter, a particular theme, and you can explore that in any number of ways. I chose more of a literary way of doing things, so more of a kind of chapterized approach. There were so many themes and then sub themes that I considered in this particular journey, and it took me many months to whittle it down to seven, and that was in conversation with you and Dr. Anthony Chafee and Dr. Sean Baker and our host Zane Griggs. So many months of distilling the information in order to arrive at seven key chapters, and each and every one of them no less profound than the next. I think that the people that we have in this film, yourself included, have the most not only incredible but important message for the world. So much bigger than just America itself, but the entire world. It comes from your absolute heart center. It's not only everybody's life journey in effect on your life's what I believe to be your life's purpose, but the journey that you've taken upon yourself is one of healing, which as a filmmaker I share. And if you'd like, I'll tell you why.
Yes, please, please. But before you share that, I want to say I appreciate that you're making it just for not only just for the US, because I mean, obviously my roots are from Korea. I mean, I was born and raised in America, but my parents and they suffered from diabetes and all the things that standard American diets afflict you with. And I think through this and through their healing, they don't understand a lot of the science, but they're like, hey, you are healing. So I will try a carnivore meat focused diet. And then at the age of 70, they're on zero medication. So there is such a strong story. And if people can understand and relate, then without all the science and say, hey, you healed and you're off medications, maybe I'll try that too. And I think that's such a important story to share. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And just on that note, I've actually tried to make the understanding of the science accessible to everybody, right? So,
That's
so
hard, but yeah.
what I find as a filmmaker, if you watch sort of nutrition-based documentaries, some of them can be so incredibly confusing
Mhm.
on such a high level from a scientific perspective that you either fall asleep, you know, you're just not understanding what people are saying. You're just not getting it, which requires then so much more effort and energy in terms of delving into it to really understand it. And you've then got to question, do you want that from a viewer? I mean, yes, you want them to absolutely understand what's happening to their body, but I wanted to make this in 90 minutes so incredibly accessible for everybody that they get it when they watch it. It stimulates a desire to heal themselves. So in its language, in its tone, in its energy, in its the dynamic way that I have put the story together, I hope that it creates that kind of impetus.
It's so important to make things as simple as possible because that's the voice that shows that you have a master of understanding in that concept. Because if you could break it down to even the youngest child for them to understand these concepts, then you have mastered that information.
Yeah.
And that's where simplicity really matters. So if you could share some of the chapters as well as, your why that you were just bringing up.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so let's start with the why. I've been in the entertainment industry pretty much my entire life. I've done Survivors and Shark Tank and The Voice and many sort of big reality shows. I've done close to 200 documentaries, most of them in the entertainment field. So very much in the music space. So let me go back in terms of my family history. In the late 60s, my mom, 1960, 69, was pregnant with my older brother. And this was in the UK.
Okay.
Okay. She had terrible morning sickness. She went to her doctor, as you do. She was 19 years old when she was pregnant. And her doctor at the time prescribed a drug called Primados. Okay, for the morning sickness. I mean, terrible morning sickness. If you kind of delve into the history, resultantly, babies were born with many defects. And my brother, sadly, was born with multiple defects, the most notable one being curvature of the spine. Many other conditions, one lung was smaller than the other, and he battled all of his life. He passed 2 years ago, so 2023.
Okay. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. And so I think that moving into the entertainment field at a very young age, and then making shows all my life, the culmination of all of that is that I reached the stage where whatever I make from now on, I want it to elevate and heal humanity in some shape or form. So that's where I'm at from at a life stage perspective. And so, you can call it kismet, but in 2016, so it's a very long story, but 2016, 2017, I directed South Africa's season of Shark Tank. And I got to work with our executive producer of Animal, Vinnie Lingham. And Vinny and I, we started talking, we became friends. And yeah, for many years, even through COVID, we were kind of banding about what we may one day want to do together. And so eventually I said, okay, this was now a year and a half ago. I said, okay, let me come to the States. Let's have a sit down and let's you, myself, and our other co-producer, Kevin, think about what it is that we want to do together. Fascinatingly, Vinny himself and his family have had a very particular journey of healing. Almost everyone in his family suffers from type 2 diabetes. And so, Vinny himself moved into a phase where whatever he does, whatever he touches, whatever he funds, he really wants it to, like me, he wants it to be in some way contributing towards the elevation and or healing of humanity. So yeah, so we sat down, we started flinging around ideas, and Vinny, thanks to Zane Griggs, had himself experienced tremendous benefits from the carnivore diet. So he's like, why don't we make a documentary feature about carnivore? And I was like, well, okay, I'd heard about you. I'd heard about Dr. Sean Baker and Dr. Anthony Chafee, but I hadn't really delved into your story just yet. So I said, leave it with me. Let me do some research. Yours, by the way, was the first book.
Thank you.
Yours was the very first book that I purchased when I started this particular journey. Okay. I then went full carnivore for 4 months. And I can quite honestly say, hand on my heart, that I have never felt better. I've never felt better. And I have no conditions that I'm aware of. I'm fit. I do strength training in the morning, generally functional fitness. I've been a martial artist almost my entire life. And I do a lot of hot yoga. I also teach. So I teach, hot 26. And so, no conditions that I'm particularly aware of. So no other kind of agenda for myself personally, other than wanting to understand, as a fairly healthy, I think, human being, what the carnivore diet would do for me. And so, most notably, I think, first and foremost, was the lifting of the brain fog. You think that your thoughts are clear. You think that you're functioning. You think that you're functioning okay. You think that you're functioning normally, right? Because you don't know anything else.
Right.
And then you try carnivore, and oh my goodness, clarity of thought. As a creative, as a filmmaker, my ability to just create went through the roof. And so increasingly, I was inspired to create a documentary feature film, having felt this incredible shift in myself that everybody around the world could benefit from. From an energy perspective, energy levels were consistent. I mean, you think siesta in the day is normal, and hey, depending on your culture and where you come from, sure, great, right? 10, 20 minutes. And I'd been used to a kind of 10, 20-minute siesta for the past, I'd say, 5 years. I just didn't need it anymore.
Right.
Yeah, just didn't need it. I had so much energy. Is incredible. So yeah, just some of the experiences that I had going onto carnivore. Yeah, I wanted to translate that into the film, Judy.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing your story and the heartbreak of your brother. I'm very sorry about that. And there were a lot of drugs around that time. There's just a lot of stuff that came to market, and until a lot of mortality happened, then they would remove it. And it's just really unfortunate. And I also appreciate and want to commend you for wanting to dive into the diet to understand what are all these people talking about. So, okay, I get the science, or I see the science, I see that people argue for these things, but then you wanted to go through it yourself. And I think that's so powerful. So, thank you, because technically you didn't need to do it, right? As much
Right.
as you had these benefits, which a lot of people do, you get a standard baseline of health and you think that's the new norm, or I'm just aging, or this is going on. But then you realize all of these benefits that you didn't even realize you could get from this diet. And that's so powerful. So thank you for sharing that. I wanted to dive into, maybe if you want to touch upon some of the chapters. Like I've been in the carnivore space for almost 8 years now, and it's hard sometimes. Like, how do you grasp everything to share? And so
Yeah.
90 minutes, that's amazing. And I'm so excited to, watch the full film. But
Yeah.
maybe if you want to touch on some of the chapters, lessons learned. Hey guys, just a really quick break. Nutrition with Judy's private practice is now called Empower Functional Health. I started as a nutritional therapist, but we have become much more all encompassing. At Empower Functional Health, we do functional medicine, chronic illness, autoimmune, gut health, environmental illness such as SIRS, mold illness, Lyme. Regardless of all these names, the goal for us is always to get you root cause healing answers. And of course, carnivore, the all meat elimination diet, is always on the table. Food, the right food, is always medicine. We offer functional tests, prescription meds, and really everything to get you closer to root cause, where you can just eat the meats you enjoy and live the life that you are meant to symptom-free. The goal is to get off meds, supplements, and everything else that your body no longer needs support in. Our practice, whether it's Nutrition with Judy, sharing podcasts and free content, or our private practice, Empower Functional Health, our goal is to support you guys in the barbell theory. We give a lot of free content, our evidence-based research. We don't use Substack. We give all our stuff away for free. We interview with the best and make it super tactical so you have clinical pearls that you can walk away with and try in your own healing journey. And then we work with some people in a smaller subset, one-on-one, to provide that level of personalized care. And as we heal these people that are chronically ill, we find these clinical pearls and golden nuggets that we can share then more publicly so that we can make wellness for all. Hopefully, the content and the guides and the free stuff we give out is enough for you to heal. But if it's not, you can always come and work with us in our private practice so that you can get more personalized care. If you want to learn more, make sure to check out empowerfunctionalhealth.com.
Yeah, sure. When you're sitting down thinking about how do I tell the story, you want to bring yourself into the space of the viewer, right? And so I thought about putting myself in the shoes of people, normal people around the world living their daily lives, and how they might resonate with this, how they might see this and think, oh my goodness, that I've never heard somebody say that. I've never felt that before, or I've never thought about it that way. Okay, so you want to put yourselves in the shoes of everybody who's going to watch, hopefully is going to watch it. And so I think the first thing to understand is that I felt that we as a species have lost the ability to listen to our body.
Right.
We've lost touch with being able to really take the time to understand what is happening in our body, right? And we lead such busy lives, right? The stresses of living in this era, in this modern day and age, where we have all the massive stresses of paying the bills, of making sure our kids are okay and taken care of, budgetary constraints. And so most people from a kind of budget perspective look at their budget and they're going to grab what they think is nutritious off the shelves because that's what they're told, right? That's the marketing that they receive. They're told it's nutritious. They have no time to really, truly consider what's in that thing, what's in that bread, that loaf of bread, or what's in that cereal on the shelf. I wanted to, in the first part of the film, bring people back to an ancient place of understanding. And so without giving too much, I really resonated with the Native American Indian story and where they come from and how they journeyed, for, throughout their evolution across the plains with the bison. And there is a deeply ancestral association with the animal. Okay, so I and this is very important. I think that a lot of the comments that are already coming at me, people who are hearing that I've made this film are saying, "Oh, how highly processed foods, big agriculture." It's not that. So further down the line in the film, I'm jumping ahead now. We really kind of delve into big ag versus the notion of shaking a farmer's hand and making sure that the food that you food that you consume comes from a truly healthy, truly organic place. So that's the beginning and effectively the end of the film, right? So understanding what's happening inside our bodies, because taking the time to understand that, which I know is very much what you say, listening to your body,
Right.
and what it needs. So that's the beginning and the end. And then we need to understand, what effectively is nutrition, right? So what are nutrients? What are the nutrients that we as a living, breathing human organism require in order to be, which is what you write about. And so we go into that from a scientific perspective without it being boring. I think it's dynamic and interesting, and people are gonna love the understanding here. Um, we do touch on plants. Okay. So do we need plants? Do we need vegetables? Do we need fruit? I know that you have so many of these conversations all the time. This is a big chapter for us. Okay. So that people can understand again the concept of, if we're going to eat vegetables, if we're going to eat fruit, what nutrients do we get from them? What does it affect from a hormone perspective, from an insulin perspective, from a fuel creation burning perspective? So we get into that, and then we need to understand the food pyramid. If we're talking about bringing ourselves back to an ancestral place, a place of whole foods, organic, really, truly organic foods, and a place of ancestry, we have to look at where we are now. We have to look at where the food pyramid came from, which is, again, something that I know that you talk about all the time and that you write about. And so, we look at the controversy of the food pyramid and how that was created. We touch on things like seed oils. Okay, so understanding what seed oils do in your body, and just a little hint here, we may or may not be looking at that further down the line, maybe in another movie.
Oh, amazing. Okay.
Maybe. So we're talking about it. Yeah, and that brings us to the kind of end of the movie where, as I mentioned at the beginning, we get into the understanding of big ag versus shaking your farmer's hand and knowing that the animals that you consume were loved and led a healthy life up until that one day.
Right.
So the circle of life.
So in our practice, in our private practice, where we work mostly with low carb, keto, carnivore dieters, and then they're struggling with some type of chronic illness often, or they're trying to improve a certain area in their health that's not fully ideal. And what I'll tell you is that most of them are looking at labs and numbers and data and what, because the doctor said, or because the RDA said, because this said, instead of looking at symptoms. Because then when you go back to what you shared in that story, if you go back even 200 years, there was not all these tests and labs. And so they had to go by symptoms. And that was the key way to identify, is there something wrong? Is there something imbalanced? So I think we need to go back to trusting our symptoms. So, like when we say, oh, itchy skin, eczema, that's normal or that's common, but normal is not, or common does not mean that it should be normal. That is a symptom of your body saying something that you're eating, exposed to something, is not making your body healthy, and that's a cry for help. And so I think if people were to go back to trusting their own symptoms, which we have been taught by big ag, big food, big all education
Yeah,
to not trust, right? We only trust doctors. We only trust experts, researchers, all the things, and no longer should you trust yourself. And so I think even the fact that we have to say organic meats when several hundred years ago it was just meat. It wasn't organic or green finished, or it was just that's the way it was naturally. That's how the animals lived. And then we ate them. And then it was, like you said, the circle of life. And we took care of the land. And I
yeah,
just think by painting the picture that you did, I hope it logically helps people to understand wow, we weren't eating 50 plants. We weren't eating the rainbow of plants. I mean, people didn't even have that luxury. So
yeah,
why do we think then today that we have to eat that way? And that's the key to health when animals have always been part of the table.
yeah,
And so I
absolutely.
love that you're sharing it that way.
Absolutely. I spent many years growing up in the UK. We used to have Sunday afternoon dinner. with my grandparents, right? And without fail, every single meal, my grandparents, both were both part of World War II. Yeah, my grandmother was a war nurse, and my grandfather actually drove Winston Churchill in Northern Africa, okay, in Egypt. Yeah. They had come from a long line of butchers in the UK as well, which is fascinating because having made the story, fascinating connection, right? And always the dominant part of our plate on at Sunday dinner was always either liver, a big piece of steak, whatever it was from a lamb perspective. That was the dominant part of our plate. My grandmother would never let us leave the table until we ate everything. Just by the way. But going back to your point, I think that we are beset with so much science
Right.
and so much data, and our we've been conditioned to rely solely and completely on going to our doctor.
Yep.
Oh, my doctor said this, whereas the counter to that with what you're saying, with what everybody in the film is saying is great, but what is your body saying to you? Have you really taken the time to understand what is happening inside yourself? Then explain that. Okay. Carnivore is the most incredible reset button. I learned that from you, and Dr. Chafee, and Dr. Ken Berry, Dr. Sean Baker, and Zen Griggs. The notion of being able to hit that reset button and your eczema goes away.
Mm.
Okay, then you reintroduce, let's say potatoes or whatever it may be, and suddenly that flares up again. Then it's so simple. You are listening to your body, right? The other thing I wanted to mention is that our kids, you go into, this is one of the really great reasons why I really am so happy that you were able to be part of the film, is because you talk about what it is that you feed your children. So I've been talking a lot about, listening to our bodies, but our children don't necessarily have the tools yet to communicate what is happening inside their body. At the same time, though, very young children spit out what is not great, right? Okay. But we also have to be careful of confusing that with conditioning their taste buds, right? So feeding them chocolate, feeding them chips or crisps, as we say in the UK, versus feeding them, putting a bowl of healthy meat in front of them and letting them just enjoy that so much. And I think that the part of the film that that really is so very important that you speak to is what we feed our children and how to listen to what's happening with them. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there is, when I first started this whole nutrition voyage, I was going to just be a children's nutritionist. And then I learned very quickly, if I don't work with the adults, that it'll never trickle down to the children, because what child is going to listen to just nutritional content?
Yeah.
And what we learn is, if a child is hungry, and they haven't eaten much else, like they're not snacking, they're not eating goldfish, they're not having shakes, then they will always accept meat in the variety or form that they want. But if you were to give a hungry child like cooked broccoli, oftentimes they will still not want it. And that's again your cue, your body's innate wisdom that there are certain things, certain nutrition that is in those certain foods that your child is probably wanting. And the number one thing I always get is, well, my kid doesn't like meat. Well, if you stop a lot of the snacking
Yeah.
all day long, I promise you, there's no child that's like, I don't want bacon, I don't want you know, ground beef or ribeye, or ribeye might be a little bit too fatty for children, but a New York strip or sirloin, I promise you, with a little bit of butter, they will
Yeah.
devour it. And you see it time and time again. But it's just, we have to get away from this notion of, if you don't feed your child or have them snack or have the 3 meals a day with 3 snacks, they're going to starve. We're
Yeah.
not starving. We're actually starving for nutrients, but we are not starving as a society. And if we start cutting out the snacking and stuff, you'll see that the children will start thriving.
Absolutely. I see it with my son. So I have a 13-year-old son as well, who's going to be 14, and it's exactly that. So speaking for myself now, growing up in South Africa.
Okay.
So, I grew up for the most part in Johannesburg, South Africa, a lot of time between Johannesburg and Cape Town. And then visiting my family. I spent a few years growing up in the UK as well, and then have always been backwards and forwards. I think that we were more inclined towards a plate full of meat. So despite what I mentioned about my grandparents, I think that growing up in a South African context, there was a lot of meat. It's a kind of a meat heavy country. I found I don't know, I guess the words that you use, innate wisdom in that, and I've always been drawn to that. My mom now is quite ill and she's vegan vegetarian. Yeah. And so well, I've questioned whether or not it is that choice of diet that has affected her so deeply. Another reason why I wanted to get so deep into the research
Yeah.
and make this film so that I can help her somewhat. Yeah, but anyway, going full circle back to what you said, it's the innate wisdom of listening to your body, right?
Yeah, and it's there's a period. So when you're sharing all these stories, and thank you for sharing so vulnerably, my
Sure.
mom told me that so she had us in the early 80s, and during that time in America, formula was considered king. So breast milk is inadequate, and so everyone should be on formula. And my mom said that just instinctually that she didn't want to try it, but all of my cousins then got on formula because they thought that was the best thing to do. And if
Right.
you think about that level of marketing, it really worked that most mothers started saying, I'm not going to give you my breast milk. It is inadequate
Yeah.
compared to buying formula with the
Yeah.
seed oils, the processed carbs, and the all the other junk that was in it. And
Yeah.
now we know better at least, but that's how strong marketing works, where we think our own bodies that have supported our, human evolution for hundreds and thousands and years, and yet we were like, no, this man-made lab version is better than the human body. I mean, that's how indoctrinated we've become in what we should be feeding. We think the experts know, the studies show, these numbers show, these headlines show, and the busier we get, the more science is thrown out there. And so many different people that I've interviewed talk about how they purposely bring so much confusion so that there's so much noise that you're just like, I'm just going to trust my doctor because my doctor's in front of me and my doctor says, don't eat a lot of meat. Red
Mm.
meat is going to cause cancer, heart disease, all that stuff. I need to
Mm.
eat lower fat or plant based fats. And then cholesterol needs to be lower, and then
Mm.
I'll have health. But
Mm.
if all of that was true, why is heart disease going up? Why is illness going up? And
Yeah.
it's just, if we just take a second and think logically, a lot of it without the science does not make sense.
Yeah. Couldn't agree with you more. This element of we've been marketed to runs as a very powerful current
Okay.
throughout the entire film. I hope that it shakes people up because we are innately fearful, right,
Right.
of separating from our doctor because that's how we've been conditioned over so many generations. The fear of breaking away from what your doctor is saying. The things that you often say and the other doctors in the film often say is challenge your doctor, is question your doctor, right? Because the first thing that they should be asking you is, what are you putting in your mouth?
Right.
Right? And they don't.
Right.
Why? Why is that? Well, because again, we can argue that many of them still have the big pharma agenda, as we've spoken about, as you and I have spoken about many times. And so the responsibility is ours, is entirely ours, right? To question our doctor.
Right.
And if there's, I fully believe, again, coming back to innate wisdom, another word for that may be intuition, trusting your intuition. And again, making sure that you take the time to listen to your intuition because we don't, again, because we get so caught up in, as you so aptly noted, the noise, right? That we don't take the time to really listen to ourselves. And that is what I hope we achieve with this film, that
Okay.
people really start listening to ourselves. And if they've done that, then they know that there are people who are driving this movement, like you, and the other people that we've carefully selected in the film, that they can say, hey, I'm not sure about what my doctor said here. Can you give me another perspective? Because it doesn't sit comfortably with me. Judy, what do you think?
Right.
So I hope I hope we achieve that with the film, and I think we will.
What's fascinating is, so we just got a puppy, and I had puppies or dogs when I was younger and knew nothing about nutrition. So I just, bought the kibble and bought all the things that were so bad for the dog. And so now that I'm sort of having this redo with pets, I'm revisiting all of it. And the vet will ask you, even if it's not a holistic vet, but they'll ask you, if the dog's not feeling well, what did they eat or what have they been eating? And they know way more about nutrition as a vet
Mm,
than most doctors do about nutrition. One, because doctors don't get much nutrition education,
mm,
but if we know that to be true for animals. So we all know dogs probably shouldn't eat onions, chocolate. There's all these certain and so why don't we think that and have that context for humans? So if they eat certain things that will make them sick, that will possibly give them cancer and heart disease, which those are also becoming prevalent in dogs too, by the way. But why don't we then extend that to humans? Of if you are not feeling well and going to the doctor should absolutely ask you, what have you been eating? And that's never the solution. The solution is, okay, you have a pain, you have this. Well, let me
mm,
give you this med or this thing to
mm.
then make that go away for today. But what
Yeah,
about 5 years from now? What about 10 years? All medications have labels that say there's a risk or there's some type of risk long term. And they never talk about that because the doctor's job in the 7 minutes they get with you is to just make you feel better for today.
yeah,
But what are the risks and rewards of what they're recommending? And that is not discussed. But they do it for animals. And so,
yeah,
how do we make that make sense for us?
yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. And again, that's a very powerful undercurrent that we explore throughout the film. Um, no, we're not saying people should go to their vet, to be assessed. I mean, you could. I mean, you could, right? Um,
Probably
uh,
know more about nutrition. But
yeah, probably. No, no. The point is to question your doctor, I think. And I go back every time people start asking me, or saying to me, but I've been with my doctor for 10 years.
yeah,
Well, exactly. You've been with your doctor for 10 years, and have you questioned them once? You just say, thanks, doc, and you walk out the door, and here's your prescription, and away you go. So what I pointedly bring people back to is my own family experience. My mom at 19 years old, who did not question her doctor, she was given a handful of pills, 1969, and so my brother was born with a number of defects, and that tends to shake people up a bit. They go, "Oh, right, yeah." So, yeah, I really hope that I think that people are increasingly starting to question.
yes.
And I do think this is going really deep now. If I look at my son, who's going to be 14 next month, I think that there is a generational shift now. So, my boy, who is in South Africa at the moment, just is naturally questioning and curious about everything. I do think that this generation that's up and coming now, by virtue of the fact that you and I have started questioning, I think that they just naturally trust their instinct, their intuition more so, you know? And yeah, I think that that is growing around the world, which is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I mean, I not to go on a tangent too much, but I love that if people start healing on carnivore and
Yeah.
they go against all the dietary recommendations of the doctors, whether you had a cardiovascular event and all the other autoimmune doctors, and if you decide to eat a way that's so against that, and then you start healing, it starts making you question, well, what else have I been lied to? What else am I not being told the truth about? And then you start just wondering, every facet of your life, have we not been questioning the things that we are told that this is actual fact, this is truth? But what if it's not? And so, same thing with my boys. They're 8 and 10, and they go to a Socratic method school. So they are taught to question everything. So, even the rules of the game, is
Yeah.
that the way that we should be playing this game? And so, they
Awesome.
question everything. And it's hard as a parent because they even question us as our parenting. But I
Yeah.
love it because I know now that they probably will never accept something just at face value, just because a book said or a person said. They want to know the why. And then they'll do their own research where they want to. But we need that. We need to have conversation and questioning of things to then ultimately you find your own truth. And so, as you said, so much of where we are with our diet, with pharma, with all of these things, we have never questioned. We just think, okay, I trust my doctor. I trust the food pyramid. I trust that these people have my best interest. So I'm going to trust because you've been educated, you've done the research, and the consequences is of our health today. And so if you don't want to suffer from illness, which I totally did, you have to question, and then there is a different way. I refuse for our clients to believe that I have an autoimmune, I have this illness, I have that illness, and that's just my lot in life. Because you can change things, get to the root, get to the why, and actually you can reverse a lot of these things. And I
Mm.
think people don't even question that. They don't even think there's an alternative to what my doctor told me.
Yeah, absolutely. There is, we've given great time and space. And I want to thank you again for sharing your journey in the film. It comes from such a deeply heartfelt place. And we have all the space and time in the film for it. And it's really, really important that people understand what you went through to get to this place of healing and making that your life's purpose as well, right? It's such an important part of the film. And so I really hope that that resonates with everybody who watches it.
Well, thank you. If you had other goals, yes, like one question the doctor, maybe challenge what you're eating today. Is there a big goal or big dream, an outcome for this film?
Yeah, wow. It's such a big question.
Yes.
I think that if people have watched this from the beginning, they will understand that this truly is a documentary feature film about healing. Okay. So that's first. That is absolutely number one. I hope, I believe that we have made a little something, something that contributes towards the, again, the elevation of humanity, and brings people back to that place of ancient wisdom, of intuition. That is the overriding undercurrent for the entire film, which is then supported by an understanding of the science and everybody who's in it, their particular journeys too.
Right.
So yeah, that's it. I'm excited for everybody to see it. 20 June. That's when it drops.
Where can people watch it? And so June 20th, I don't know what date that is or what day that is, but
Yeah.
where can people watch the film?
Yeah, so 20 June in select theaters
Okay.
and on digital. So absolutely everywhere that you're able to rent. Okay. So Amazon, Apple TV, everywhere that you can rent a film, rent or buy. In terms of theaters, so we've got New York, LA, Vegas, Austin, and possibly Houston and Dallas as well. And then there will be an opportunity to host the film in your city if it's not listed in the cities I've just mentioned. If people want to find out more, they can go to our website at animal.movie/how to watch. They can click on host a screening to get started in terms of hosting it in your community.
Okay. And I'll put all of the information in the show notes.
Okay,
If I
thank
can
you.
ask you, so for you, Kevin, Vinny, first of all, thank you for even get that messaging out there more openly and easier for people to consume. How much has this film in making this and preparing for it changed your lives?
Wow, that's also a big question. Number one is connecting with the likes with you and like-minded individuals who share that vision for healing the world, for healing humanity. So, meeting you and everyone else, becoming plugged into this incredible movement has absolutely fundamentally changed my life. So, I had a vision and a dream where I wanted to make a film that contributes towards healing. But, that was the initial vision, right? And so it becomes something entirely different. And the narrative that I initially wrote evolved and changed once I'd spoken to you and everybody else. So becoming plugged into and understanding what it is that how you live your life and what your life's purpose is has certainly affected my life's purpose. I want to make anything that would not contribute towards that elevation in some way now. As much as I've enjoyed making, big format reality series like Survivors and whatnot, that's been fun. But yeah, so honestly, that's what's changed for me, and I think similarly for Kevin and Vinny too, my fellow producers. Oh, they also have a deep desire to make the kind of films that have an impact.
Well, thank you so much. I really believe that once you heal, you find more purpose in what you can do to serve your fellow human. And
Yeah,
in that serving, you find true purpose.
yeah,
I recently read a book that's about this person that had very little money, then ends up becoming a billionaire and thought that was the answer of chasing things, and then realizes it's not the answer. It's not that chase was still there even afterward. And it's like it's never going to be enough. But I
yeah,
think if you serve your fellow human and like you said, make the world a little bit better of a place, but you need health to even do that.
yeah,
So if I when I was sick, there was no way I could do the work that I'm doing right now. But
yeah,
because I have my health back, I feel like it's my second chance and I'm going to give back to the world. And in doing that, though, it fulfills me too. And I'm sure you get that too in this film.
yeah,
And I think it's the way to make the world a better place. If we get our health back, there are so many bigger implications. We can help our communities, our families, our loved ones. And then what reach do they have? And that's how we can change the world. And
yeah,
so thank you. Thank you for doing this film because it's such an important message. No one should be able to take your health away from you, but when we have people that are not serving our best interest as their first recommendation, and maybe it's just that they're so busy and they don't know, but we have to take that power back. We have to say, I trust my gut instinct. The reason there's that saying is your gut has 80% of your immune health. That's what allows you to be healthy or not. So
yeah.
your gut instinct, that innate wisdom, we need that. And we have to get back to trusting it. And thank you for painting that picture so that we can get there. So thank you.
Absolute pleasure, Judy. And again, I just want to thank you for being part of this incredible film of ours. I can't wait for you to see it because you haven't seen it
I
in its
know, I
in
know.
its in its entirety yet. You've seen bits and pieces, but you haven't seen the whole thing yet. So cannot wait for you and everybody to see it.
Well, thank you so much. I'll put all the information in the show notes, but thank you again for joining me today.
All right. Thanks so much, Judy. Take
Okay.
care.
You too. Bye.
Goodbye, everybody. Bye.
If you're wondering what our puppy eats, we are feeding him a mostly animal based diet. I have shared in my newsletter what we are feeding him, but the whole animal pet industry is also something that is very, very heartbreaking. We will eventually write an article and we will share a lot more of the resources that you can look into to properly feed and allow your pets, cats, dogs to thrive. I hope you take the time and watch this film and support it because this is how we can start changing the narrative. The reason why there is no more Coke and Coca Cola is because of the mothers that went on that march. There were people, grassroots movements that make a change. And all it requires, and I know I say all, but we really need to make change by supporting these films and sharing our stories of healing. In healing, we can then find the abilities to give back and to serve and make this world a little bit better of a place. When we don't have health, it is so hard and we are limited to even give back. So imagine if we all have our health back, or we have most of our health, and we are eating the right foods for our system, how much of a better place could the world be? Okay, guys, make sure to eat a lot of meat, take care of your bodies because it is the only place you have to live. I will talk to you later. Bye, guys.